famines, mistreatment by English landlords, and really for a number of reasons, drove a number of uprisings in Ireland in the latter part of the 19th century and the early 20th century. Societies dedicated to Irish and Gaelic culture and Irish independence proliferated and became intertwined with other revolutionary ideas of the era, like Marxism and women's suffrage. One of the leaders in these organizations was Countess Constance Markievicz, who was an Irish-raised painter and socialite whose dedication to alleviating the suffering of the poor earned her both accolades and censure. She fought for women's suffrage, she campaigned against Winston Churchill, and she took up arms in the bloody April 1916 Easter Rising. The role of this radical, revolutionary woman is history that deserves to be remembered. Constance Gore Booth was born in London in 1868, eldest daughter of an explorer, adventurer, and baronet who owned land in County Sligo, Ireland. Family friend and poet William Butler Yeats wrote a poem about Constance and her sister, calling them girls in silk kimonos, both beautiful, one a gazelle. Constance was the gazelle. Their father was known in Ireland as a progressive landlord and enjoyed a better relationship with his tenants than many English landowners in Ireland. He was active in local politics, cared about his tenants' welfare. Constance studied painting, first at the Slade School of Fine Art in London in 1892, where she joined the National Union of Women's Suffrage Societies. She met Count Kazimierz Markievicz, an artist from a wealthy Polish family, at a ball while in Paris. Her family looked into his title, and one Russian intelligence agent reported that he took it without right, but a genealogical society claimed he did have a claim to nobility. Regardless, for the rest of her life, Constance would be called Countess Markievicz. Their one child, Maeve, was born in 1901. Maeve would be raised largely by her grandparents. Both were active in the art scene in Dublin with other influential painters and artists, many of whom were also Irish nationalists. She wasn't especially interested until she rented a cottage outside the city and found copies of The Peasant and Sinn Féin newspapers. She read about Robert Emmet, who led a small group in a failed rebellion in 1803, for which he was executed for treason. His and other stories of Irish rebellion inspired her, and in a flash it became her passion. A short time later she told a friend, quite frankly, that I had only just realized that there were men in Ireland whose principles did not allow them to take an oath of allegiance to the foreign king, whose powers they were pledged to overthrow. From then on, her life revolved around the cause. Her preoccupation with it led to the estrangement from her daughter, and her husband lived in Ukraine from 1914. She joined the Gaelic League and the Daughters of Éireann. She arrived at the working-class meeting adorned in fine silks and jewels, but convinced the others that she wasn't just one of the castle set. The Daughters were founded by early revolutionary Maud Gonne and sought the independence of Ireland as well as the protection and spread of Irish culture. Her conversion was complete when she joined Sinn Féin, an Irish independence party. She was no longer a socialite and an artist. She had become a revolutionary. One of her friends said that after she joined Sinn Féin, she became single-minded in her dedication to the cause. She learned quickly the basics of committees and the work of Sinn Féin. Constance's sister Eva was living in Manchester, already advocating for workers' rights and women's suffrage. Markievicz joined her to help her sister oppose Winston Churchill, who supported a bill the women opposed, affecting barmaids. Markievicz gave some of her first speeches here, working with the suffragettes. While she was driving a coach and four, as a coach with 4 horses, someone heckled her by shouting, "Can you cook a dinner?" She yelled back, "Yes, can you drive a coach and 4?" Churchill lost the election. The following year, she started the Nuffin Éireann, a paramilitary youth organization, with another leader, Bulmer Hobson. She formed it in response to pro-union boy groups, saying that nothing could be sadder than to see the boys saluting the flag that flew in triumph for every defeat their nation has known. She taught them how to use firearms herself. All that will count in the end is their willingness to undertake a life of self-sacrifice and self-denial for their country's sake, she said. The Finn would run guns for the Irish independence movement and take up arms as well. At the first official meeting, a boy tried to force her out by saying women had no place in a physical force association, but Hobson intervened, and she stayed. She became a supporter and admirer of Jim Larkin, who was setting up a trade union in Belfast. In 1913, Larkin led a strike at the Dublin Electric Tramway Company. The owner got police to protect his property. If he can arm, why shouldn't the Dubliners' workers arm? Wherever one of your men is shot, then shoot 2 of them, Jim Larkin told his strikers. When his foes promised to starve the strike out, he responded with, "Any man who starves when he has food in a shop window is a damn fool." Constance transitioned away from the Fine to support a food kitchen in Dublin, which she worked tirelessly to supply. This began a lifelong relationship with the poor of Dublin and pushed her more into socialist philosophy. Her work was well remembered, with one group writing that, at a time when all the forces of capitalism had combined to crush the workers, when the forces of the British Crown were exhibiting all their traditional brutality, you came to our aid to organize relief. James Connolly, founder of the Irish Socialist Party, advocated for and then worked to create the Irish Citizen Army to protect the strikers. The Countess wrote them a battle hymn. Markievicz liked Connolly, who she said treated her as a comrade, giving me any work that I could do, and quite ignoring the conventional attitude towards the work of women. She became the Citizen Army's honorary treasurer. In 1915, she gave a speech to a group of women in which she said, "If you want to walk around Ireland or any other country, dress suitably in a short skirt and strong boots. Leave your jewels and gold wands in the bank, and buy a revolver." Before they could take any other actions, international affairs intruded. Franz Ferdinand was assassinated and Europe was plunged into war. The independence movement faltered because some supported the English cause while others saw the fate of Ireland as paramount. Markievicz became involved with the Irish Women's Council, which absorbed the Daughters of Ireland and became the women's arm of another militia group, the Irish Volunteers. The Irish Neutrality League, headed by James Connolly and with Markievicz as an active participant, sought to keep Ireland out of the war. A banner read, "We serve neither king nor Kaiser, but Ireland." James Connolly lived for a time with Markievicz, whose home was open to all manner of Irish revolutionaries. One attendee said that, "We used to go into the sitting room and someone would sit at the piano and there would be great singing and cheering and rough amusements." Even as the war began, plans were being made for an open Irish rebellion. The Countess became an officer in the Citizen Army and continued to drill with the other members. The Irish Brotherhood chose Easter Sunday, 1916, for the uprising. They quickly faced difficulty. Irish agents sought German support, but Germany wasn't willing to send forces to the island. They did send guns, but they were intercepted by the British. The worst was yet to come. The decision was made without Ian McNeill, head of the Irish Volunteers, and he was shocked to learn about the rising just days before it was supposed to happen. He thought it would be futile, but couldn't convince the others to stop. On Easter Sunday, he put a message in the newspaper. "Owing to the very critical position, all orders given to Irish volunteers for tomorrow are hereby rescinded." James Connolly refused to call off the rebellion, but it was delayed to Monday. Markievicz knew that they had little chance of victory, but was just as willing to become a martyr. 1,200 members of the volunteers and the Citizen Army gathered, fewer than they hoped. They announced the formation of the Provisional Government of the Irish Republic and read out a proclamation which began, "Irishmen and Irish women," and promised equal rights for women and the right to vote. Markievicz was a staff lieutenant and fought on the south side of downtown Dublin at Stephen's Green. With her all the while, and sometimes a nuisance to others, was her cocker spaniel, Poppet. She spoiled the dog horribly, and Poppet was disliked by some of the men. One veteran remembered that the dog actually tore a piece out of the Irish Republic flag that Constance had made and that flew during the uprising. A district nurse reported that she saw the Countess shoot an unarmed member of the Dublin police and shout, "I got him!" Constance denied that, and another report put her across town at the time the officer was shot. The rebels captured several important locations in downtown Dublin, but failed to take the lightly defended Dublin Castle or the city's ports and railways. The British were taken by surprise, and only 1,200 soldiers were at hand. They also brought in artillery to dislodge the rebels from buildings and barricades. By the end of the week, though, over 16,000 soldiers reached Dublin. Markievicz fought at Stephen's Green until they were forced to pull back into the Surgeons' College and may have injured an enemy sniper. After 6 days of fighting, the Irish surrendered. Constance only handed over her flag after reverently kissing it. The rebels were given no defense in the court-martials. She was sentenced to death, with the recommendation that it be commuted to life in penal servitude, solely and only on account of her sex. Her sentence was commuted, but many others were killed, including her friend Connolly, whose shattered ankle made the British tie him to a chair in front of the firing squad. "Why don't they let me die with my friends?" she lamented. Thousands were arrested for having revolutionary contacts, even if they took no part in the present rebellion, and 1,800 were interned in camps in England and Wales. Worse, one officer had executed Francis Sheehy Skeffington, a committed pacifist, during the fighting. The British reprisals after the Easter Rising ignored warnings and ended up driving more people to the cause of Irish independence. A general amnesty to the rebels was finally granted, but by then the damage was done. The British pressed conscription after the Rising, and the Countess was jailed again in 1918 for fighting them. While she was in jail, Sinn Féin won 73 out of 105 Irish seats in Parliament, and this made her the first woman ever elected to Parliament. But she, like all of Sinn Féin, refused to take her seat. Instead, they formed the revolutionary Dáil Éireann, the Irish Parliament, and declared independence. The War for Independence had begun. She served as the Minister for Labour from 1919 to 1922, only the second woman to hold a cabinet-level position in Europe. She was often on the run in this period, and her life threatened by British forces. In one of her stints in jail, she wrote, "Jail is the only place one gets time to read." The end of the War for Independence came with the signing of the Anglo-Irish Treaty, which gave Ireland Dominion status, like Australia and Canada. Constance and the Irish Women's Council rejected the treaty, and others objected that the treaty was signed without consulting the Dáil and that it didn't go far enough to secure actual independence. The women had their own complaints, because when they pushed to have all women over 21 given the right to vote before the 1922 election, the supporters of the treaty refused. Ostensibly, this was because they didn't have time to get them on the rolls, but it may also have been because younger women would vote for anti-treaty candidates. The disagreements turned into the Irish Civil War, and Constance continued to speak against the treaty. She helped to found the Fianna Fáil political party. She was elected again in 1927, but later that year fell gravely ill. She gave most of her money away helping the poor and the elderly, and was hospitalized in a public ward. The doctor operated for appendicitis, and her friends were bombarded by well-wishers. One said, "What would the people in the slums do without her? She's given up everything for us. Please God, she'll get better." Count Markievicz came back to Ireland to be at her side, and she died after midnight on July 15th. By 1918, women over 30 in Ireland who met certain qualifications of education and property were given the vote, and they were granted full parliamentary franchise in 1922. Constance Markievicz had spent most of her life fighting for Irish independence, both in politics and, when necessary, with arms. Because of her anti-treaty activities, the government refused her a state funeral, yet thousands of people showed up to remember her anyway. Other Irish leaders remembered her well. One thing she had in abundance: physical courage, Sean O'Casey said. Close friend and leader of Fianna Fáil, Eamon de Valera, said she was the friend of the toiler, the lover of the poor. Sacrifices, misunderstanding and scorn lay on her road she adopted, but she trod unflinchingly. Countess Constance Markievicz has come to be viewed as an important figure both in the cause of Irish independence and the rights of women, and yet she is still a controversial figure. Lauren Arrington, a professor of English at Maynooth University who wrote a 2015 biography, said, "In England, I think she's still considered to be a dangerous figure associated with political violence and destabilization. And yet her life represents a cause strongly held and a will not easily overcome." I hope you enjoyed this episode of The History Guy, short snippets of forgotten history between 10 and 15 minutes long. And if you did enjoy, please go ahead and click that thumbs up button. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for future episodes, please write those in the comment section. I will be happy to personally respond. Be sure to follow The History Guy on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and check out our merchandise on teespring.com. And if you'd like more episodes on forgotten history, all you need to do is subscribe.